The next session is basically about are startups leveraging PR enough to build their brand and image? Or for this panel discussion, I would like to call upon on stage Xavier Prabhu, founder and managing director, PR Hub; Bhavya Sharma, associate director, PR and communications, Urban Company; Gulrez Alam, co-founder, Teamology; Priyam Divgi, head corporate communications, WakeFit; Rahul Nag, head of communications, Pocket FM; Vasundhara Singh, senior vice president. If you guys are here, could you please come on stage and have your seats? Please have your seat.
Check.
Have your seat, sir. All right, once again, okay, we have 3 members already. All right. Are all the members over here? No? 2 more? Are they having coffee? Okay, मेरे को किसी ने बोला था कि मेटावर्स पे चांद की जमीन भी मिल रही है. सर चले गए यहाँ पे बोल के मेरे को कान में बोला था उन्होंने. खैर एनीवेज चांद पे जमीन जरूर खरीदेंगे. फिलहाल आप लोग हैं Imagexx 2022, an initiative by AdGully, and soon we are going to be starting this session, which is about are startups leveraging PR enough to build their brand and image? Our gold partners are ATDB, Hill Plus Norton. All right, we have got our session chair and 2 more people to go, right? Ladies and gentlemen, once again announcing this, you are at Imagexx 2022, presented by Ad Factors, co-powered by Kaizen Media, Mantra Value 360 Communication Private Limited, Graycell Public Relations, Gold Partner, ATDB Communications, Noelton Strategies, Silver Partner, Teamology, Softtech and Media Services Private Limited, Bronze Partner, The Mavericks, Personal Care Partner, M Caffeine, Gifting Partner, Eco-Kari, Humanizing Fashion, Rene Cosmetics, Innovation Partner, PR Hub, Knowledge Partner, Rudderfin, Support Partner, Seraphim Communications LLP, Event Managed by Pixel by Pixel. Waiting for the other members. If you could please take your chair. Do we have all the members now? Okay, one more. And thank you everyone who is over here. Thank you for giving us your time. It is absolutely precious and we respect it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, finally we have all the members over here on the panel, and it looks really beautiful right now. For some reason, I don't know why, but that's how it's supposed to be. You are at Imagexx 2022, and the topic for this particular discussion is, are startups leveraging PR enough to build their brand and image? Off you go, guys.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And this panel is just before lunch. And it is the largest panel. We are packed with 7 people. 1 is here, and we are in tune with the trends. We are hybrid. 1 here in physical, so we are in the, in line with the current trends. My name is Xavier Prabhu. I own and run PR Hub, and I do a couple of other things as well besides that. And we have 6 others. Bhavya is on there. She's the associate director of communications of Urban Company. Then we have Priyam, who heads CopCom for WakeFit. She wants to sell you beds and furniture and a lot more. And then we have Gulrez. Interestingly, he's from a part of India which is known for more its laid-backness in food, which is Kolkata. And he's an entrepreneur himself who does digital marketing and PR and a couple of other things. Then we have Vasu alias Vasundhara Singh, a known South Delhi Afikando, who basically heads business development as Senior Vice President at Value 360. And then, of course, you know the guy who's, troubling you all the time on IPRF and Insta and all of that. His name is Vikram Karvi. He's the vice president at Factors. And of course, Rahul Nag, who actually heads PR for and Copcom for Pocket FM. So one of the things that we all discussed was that this topic is very, very generic. So, and if you just get into that, all of you would be very bored. So I just wanted to, sort of open it up and make it very, very specific so that, all of you here have some takeaways at least. And I'll just set the context, and I will not talk about startups. I will not talk about innovation. I will not talk about digital transformation, no metaverse. So no buzzwords. We'll just keep it clean, simple, PR and comms so that, it's some takeaways for all of you. So we actually have just 4 questions, and we're going to keep it very, very natural. The first that we wanted to discuss today basically is, do founders really understand PR? Founders of startups really, really understand PR. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Priyam, share her perspective, and then I'll have Bhavya do hers.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. With respect to founders or whether they know and understand PR, I think it goes back to where the founders kind of come from, right? I think a lot of the founders, at least in the past decade, have passed out of the IIMs, IITs, ISBs, and the likes. So their knowledge of PR per se is very limited to start off with. But entrepreneurs in general are curious beings as well. And if they value the function, I think they are interested in learning about it. So it really comes down to whether they see PR as a function of value or not. And I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, we are left with the onus to kind of educate founders to kind of come up with, or rather like make them understand what PR really means and how reputation can impact a company. So that would be my opening statement.
Bhavya, can you hear us and come in? Bhavya?
Absolutely, Xavier. I can hear all of you.
Okay, that's
and
good.
I must say this large screen with my face on it is really daunting for me. I can see that on my screen. So to the question though, whether founders understand PR well or not, I think most of them do. They do comprehend that if done well, PR is a fantastic tool for long-term brand building, right? That's and can eventually help companies build brand loyalists and even retain or attract new talent, fresh talent. So in my mind, they understand the goal or the outcome that needs to be achieved via PR, but how to get there, how to get to that outcome is where they rely on their in-house PR teams or external agencies. And that's where our expertise comes in. But whether they understand PR or not, I think they really do.
Okay. I have a question for the audience, and I think this came from Kunal on Instagram to Vikram. Is that, can you guys name one startup which is really excellent at PR and is actually a case study? Any of you can just raise your hand and tell a name. And it can't be a client of yours and you can't work in that company, please. Yes, go ahead. Zomato, okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Only one startup? India has 60,000 startups. No one else? Yep. Okay. Boat, okay. Any other tries? Yep. Ola, okay. Nitin influenced you in the last panel. Okay, that's not good. Okay, yeah. Cred, yeah. Okay. Interesting. No one has said that's not a unicorn. All of them are large unicorns. So I think size definitely matters in startups as well. I think that seems to be the case. Okay, that's an interesting one. And I think I was just thinking, do I see, I think a lot more is consumer. There's nothing B2B in this quite a bit. All of them are consumer. Yes. Okay. But that's not a startup. That's not a startup. Yeah. That's a startup. Yeah. Okay. So consumer, you got to be large. That's the common thing. Okay. And I'm just trying to keep this interesting. He sits next to me, and one of the things that he likes to do is cooking, and what he likes is Chinese cooking. Okay. So if you want to have something really interesting to eat when you're in Kolkata, I think he's there. And Vikram, you know that he's actually very, very all over on the social media, but he privately messaged me to say that he's actually an introvert. Okay, so he actually doesn't like talking to people, and because he got into PR, he has to do all of this himself. And Vasundhara basically doesn't run a marathon, but she's exactly a fitness freak. And Rahul actually loves laughing and cooking. Okay, so you want jokes, I think you can go to him after the panel though, not during the panel. And Bhavya actually made more money in her last career as an investment banker. So we were actually asking her, why did you switch to PR? Because you earn less money here. You earn much more money in investment banking. So I just did that more to ensure that you know the panelists as well, a little bit more in the panel. So the next question that I'll go to is, and I'll ask the other side, the agency side to do that, is that, and it's a very interesting question, right? It's not just about PR for startups. And I have this experience because, we also do certain things globally. And one thing I know that in the US, most agencies don't take up startups as clients. They actually are reluctant to do, and I've had a lot of experiences where, they're actually, trying to assess, are you ready for PR? Are you, someone who's really having something that we can leverage, all of that. It's a little different in India. So the question that we want to ask is that, is there a stage at which a startup is really ready for PR? How do you assess that? So can we have Vikram and Vasu and Gulres address that?
Okay. I think if a startup is ready for PR or not depends on the orientation the founder comes from. Some founders are really kicked about PR. They understand what PR can achieve for them, and they jump into PR right at the beginning, and they know how to do it as well. They experiment, and before even approaching the agency, they have done their homework. They have connected with few journalists. They are, on with social media. They are connecting with influencers and so on. But also at there are some founders who couldn't figure out when to start PR. But I think the ideal stage would be, we were discussing some time back that, when a company finds its product market fit, that's one, and has some statistics in place, be it number of consumers or some funding in place, only then they should ideally think of PR, because by then you have shown the proof of concept, you have some trust of outside party into your concept, and that's the time I think most of the media or influencers would be willing to talk to you. I think that's the kind of a time that you need to, but there is no right time, like there is no one right answer. There is no exact right time for when a founder should start PR. It all depends on what they are focusing on at that point in time. Some focus on to getting the product right, and they go all out in getting the product right. And that itself also becomes a challenge, because then it becomes too late for them to get into PR. So I think the balance has to be there, is what I feel. And bringing in a consultant at the right moment will make all the difference.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So to answer your question, I think we as a brand and, overall, if we see the ecosystem, we've had the chance to, work with different startups and at different stages, right? Having worked with over, I think, more than 200 startups in the last 15 years. And if I have to assess, there are three key stages that, we as a brand have got associated with startups. The first is when a company may have come into existence, but the product is still under development. And so that is the first stage, where the company is in existence, but the brand is still being developed, and the product is not in the market. The second stage is when the product is ready and the MVP is ready to be launched, and that is the second stage that the brand can start going to the market and is ready to start speaking to its stakeholders. And the third stage is, of course, when Vikram said, that the brand has been in existence for the next 6 months, 12 months, or maybe even 2 years. And that is the time where they've actually been in the market, they've actually assessed their audience, they've had some level of acquisition as well, and they've tried to find the product and consumer fit, or the product market fit. So those are the three key stages. Now, when you start doing PR in stage one, which is when you're still not too ready with the product, but the company is incepted, I think that's a very early stage of starting to speak about your brand. One, because the media interest is a little low because the product is still under development. And also you are talking on primarily the premise of the business. You don't have the actual product or you don't have the merit of the business to actually start talking about. In my understanding, the second stage, which is when your product or your solution is ready, you're ready to start talking to the different stakeholders, whether it is talking to the investors, whether it is talking to your customers, whether it is talking to your brand partners. That is the time when an effective PR machinery should be brought in, and that can start showing results.
Aldous?
Hi, hello everyone. In my point of view, if a startup dealing with a brand or a product, when it comes to existence and they have some stacks with them, and they have client base, they have made some good numbers, then they are get into the PR. If you are looking for investors also, or they are looking for a marketing purpose. That's the stage where they can looking for investors.
Yeah, so the next question is slightly a bit more candid, and this comes from our own experience. Right now, we are just stuck with one founder who's stuck on with TechCrunch. So he's just basically saying, put everything on hold as long as one TechCrunch happens, and then we'll come to it. And I know that many of us in the room will find it extremely logical, and you guys would have actually come to face with such clients. So the next question is that, for Priyam and Bhavya and Rahul, is that are founders really open and listening on to professional advice when it comes to PR and communication in startups? Rahul?
This is something which I'm talking from my experience. I have been working in the startup space since 2017 and worked with the B2B and both B2C startups. Fortunately, I have come across with entrepreneurs who have always been open to feedbacks, always been open to understanding the value of PR, and always listens to the kind of execution that needs to be done. But having said that, I have heard horrible stories and horror stories about...
Please tell us the horrible stories.
I cannot take names, but I have, like, while speaking to media journalists who are into the closed circuit, I understood that there are many founders who probably have reached at certain success level, probably based on or riding on the PR tools or the communications process, but once they reach a certain success, a stage in their life, they started behaving aggressive with the media. They get arrogant on the social media, and that is something which needs to be arrested at the right time. That is an approach which is a big no-no. And most importantly, what I believe in the startup space, what is needed is while the intention needs to come from the founders, the entrepreneurs who are building something to bridge certain gaps in the society, probably they are not best placed to execute the communications, and we are there to help that help that process. From the perspective of whether they are open to listen, my experience has been 100% positive, But from the conversation I have with my industry colleagues and some of the media, yes, there need to be some bit of fixation that needs to be done.
Bhavya?
Sorry,
Bhavya,
I
can
was
you?
on mute.
Okay.
Yeah. So in my mind, actually, there are two stages, right? With respect to founders being open to being educated and listening on this. First is when the first-time founders are finally taking the plunge into doing PR. That's after the product market fit stage, and this is the time that they are looking for, say, support and are willing to try or do whatever it is being asked or recommended to them. And this is when they usually rope in an external consultant or a PR agency as a starting point, just to understand the lay of the land. The second stage is when they have had numerous media interactions and seen a few media cycles play out. And by this time, they have become wiser. They're a lot more clear about the positioning of the company itself, the brand, and even the key messaging points that they want to drive through PR. And this is when they start to take lead, right? And this is where the transition happens. Okay, so the disconnect, if they the disconnect that happens here often is when the PR agency is unable to keep up with the transition itself. That the founder has become wiser about the lay of the land, and that there are certain key messages that they want to drive. And if you have the right ally in your internal or external people that who are supporting you with this, if you have the right kind of ally, I think that it's a fantastic match. If it's not, if it's disconnected, that's when uh, companies and agencies part ways usually. But are they being open? Are they open to being educated and listening? I think yes. Even they understand that they're not the right, not experts in it initially, but gradually, once they've had a few interactions with seasoned as well as new journalists, they are able to figure out what needs to be said where, what is the kind of headline that they also should, like fit in when they are having an interaction. And those are the kind of coaching that an external consultant or agency helps with. But after a point in time, the agency needs to step up and add more value. I mean, it can't be just one, like plug this word in that in that interview. There needs to be a lot more value add from the agency.
I think you triggered Vikram, and I think he wants to say
Yeah,
something.
so thanks, Bhavya, for giving me that thought. I've had the fortune of working with multiple startups right at the early stage ones to most successful startup. And when we come as a communication consultant, we have this in mind, that I have to coach this guy. I have to tell him what needs to be done. These are the 5 things that he has to follow. There's a messaging document, there's this briefing thing and all that. And this side, the founder is very passionate about his product and he knows his product best. And sometimes, just letting him be the way he is probably is the best PR strategy that we can do. And even journalists like that fresh, raw approach of a startup. And, when they talk to a, say, 22-year-old or 23-year-old, speaking as if, he's just speaking his heart out really works wonders. And I've seen that, making it big, large format stories without any coaching, without any, consultation approach that we go with our minds. Sometimes unlearning is also very important along with them because these guys are quite agile. They are quite smart in their own way. Learning along with them is itself, a great tool for us to progress in our careers.
I think a lot of PR people in the
Absolutely.
audience would feel a little scared about that because when founders go all heart out, all your multiple stories is gone in one interview, right? And then what do you do for the rest 1 year, right? So that's another problem, correct, no? Yeah. Yeah, I think, Priyam, I think Rahul wants to say something and after that I think you can come in. Yeah.
So all agreed and done, but I think there is a huge risk that is involved because this is not a matter of one large stories. This is about sustaining the messaging for a longer period of time, and until and unless you control that energy, which comes from the founders, things might go haywire, and the damage control will take much larger time period in terms of getting neutralize the possible crisis that might hit out of it.
Priyam?
I'll actually continue Bhavya's thought because I agree with what she said completely. There's one thing when it comes to whether founders listen or understand or are willing to kind of understand the perspective of PR is whether PR people speak their language. Like, startups are built on the tenets of frugality and agility. So unless a PR campaign or a PR strategy kind of reflects that, like a low investment, high returns kind of PR campaign, for example, I think when you speak that language, they resonate and then they kind of start listening to us much more. Just as an example, I think at Wakefit, we recently did a campaign called the Kumbhakaran, approved by Kumbhakaran, which kind of blew up on LinkedIn. The idea was we kind of prepped our founders and internal leadership to make them understand that this will cost literally, like it was completely an organic campaign to start with. And secondly, we knew that the returns were high, but we also told them about the risks that if we are developing a character like Kumbhakaran on LinkedIn, it is very likely to get pulled down because LinkedIn doesn't allow for a mythical character to be on the platform. So, I mean, apprising the entrepreneurs of the risks, of the benefits, and then kind of developing campaigns, I think helps and goes a long way in, making them listen, I guess.
I actually missed a little interesting thing about Priyam when I introduced my entire panel. Priyam is born in a state which all of us want to work out of. You know which state that is in India, right? All of us want to go and work from there, particularly during pandemic. I know a lot of my friends who moved to that place to work out of. You know which state that is? Goa. She's born. Okay, but then, interesting thing is she went from Goa to Gujarat, and then now she's in Bangalore, and she's married to a Malayali who's lived all his life in Kolkata. Okay, so in fact, a lot of interesting food is the way I saw that. Thanks, Priyam. So the next question that I just wanted to pass around the panel is something that is, very relevant for all of us right now is how has the change to media's landscape impacting startup PR, right? And I think media has changed tremendously in the last 18 months, and I think it continues to transform itself. So how is it affecting, startup PR? And I think I want all of us to be candid about. And can I begin with Vikram?
Thanks, Xavier. I think changed media landscape has benefited the startups because most of the startups are today tech-led and they are online. And everything that is online is benefiting them. So they know they don't want coverage in Economic Times print because like our traditional clients, their aunties are not calling up and saying, I saw your mugshot in Economic Times of Times of India front page. They want ROI for the bucks. And I think getting a good hybrid media story or online story that has good reach and good eyeballs, they're all game for it. And they're not only stuck with media story only. They can go in for an influencer. They can, and it's not that lifestyle influencer only work for them. It could be a LinkedIn influencer. So the changing media landscape is working very, very well for them. And it's easier for us to connect with the startup founder more easily to tell him that, this is what is good for you, and he will understand and he'll work accordingly.
Vasu?
Yeah, I agree with Vikram. I think the changing media landscape and the emergence of the digital landscape has worked in favor of the startups. And so initially, the media landscape was fairly simple. You had, media reporting facts. However, in the last few years, with the emergence of this new landscape, we're now living in a clickbait sort of a world where everybody wants to break the news first. And sometimes it even lacks authenticity. You have different formats that have emerged. You have long formats, long story analysis formats like your Ken, your few others. Then you have like a lot of direct business reporting platforms. You have a lot of social media, platforms that are reporting and breaking news. Of course, you have the startup digital platforms. So it's diverse now and it's dynamic. It's changing very rapidly, and which is why, to the earlier point that we as the PR professionals and for brands, we need to keep our clients and our entrepreneurs abreast with this changing landscape. Only then will they be able to understand this changing dynamics of the landscape as well as contribute effectively, because you have to develop different kind of content to be able to utilize this entire landscape in a right way. So, and be able to create that right media framework. So I think it has worked in its favor completely. The second point that I want to make is that this changing landscape is also, in a way, creating a level playing field for startups. And when I say startups, I mean the hypergrowth startup as well as some of the bootstrap startups, because it's almost like it's democratized the entire content distribution. So what it is allowing is that even brands which are not heavily funded and have maybe smaller budgets are able to leverage on this digital landscape in a much more effective way. And they are able to, in spite of not having access to the mainstream media, they are continuing to have a dialogue and engage with their stakeholders through these emerging new platforms. So, and which is a great thing, and that's why you're seeing so many success stories emerging of bootstrap unicorns in the country in the last few years. So definitely a great time for startups.
Before I ask Gulresh, just want to ask the audience, how many of you actually in your real working life have seen startup founders saying, no economic times, no none of that, I'm happy with the online story? How many of you, so many of them are adding no this side very strongly. Okay, done. Gulresh, you just want to add something? Okay, done. So you were actually nodding very, very strongly, ma'am. So you want to say something? Okay, you can just speak loudly. Though I know lunch is there, they'll give it to you, I think.
Thank you so much. So I had the privilege of working with a startup in Delhi a couple of months back, and I was handling the PR for that for some time. And I do remember we used to have these weekly calls, and my boss, he used to continuously and constantly tell me that let's get on Mint, let's get on ET, let's get on HT. So we did come on your story, but then he was like, how can we get on ET? So the only calls that we had, the conclusion, the synopsis of the calls would be, let's get there, let's get to Business Insider or something. So I don't think so anybody wants to just settle for online, and that's a good thing. And also, I wouldn't say over-ambitious, but I would say if you don't have a certain kind of ambition set for yourself, it kind of refrains you from even allowing or understanding what you're capable of as a startup. And nobody wants to just settle down and be okay in a particular space and place. So I think a boon and a curse. And,
yeah, thanks so much.
you.
Yeah, and I think this panel, I think we wanted it to be pretty informal and interactive. So any of you have any questions, please just put your hand up and don't wait for us, because I think all of us can keep speaking. And I'm hungry as well, don't worry. So I'll do 45 minutes exactly, and I'll wrap it up. It's in my interest as well. So the next one is actually something that we will wind off the panel with, is something that is connected to what we were discussing, is how is measurement metrics with startups? How is it changing? What are the challenges with it? All of that. So Rahul, you want to start with?
So I'll just continue with her point. Probably then I am seeing myself uniquely placed because I have worked with multiple startups, and mostly all are into the internet space, and we never compare an economic time story with a Business Insider or your story. So there are 4 things that we always focus on. When it comes to the measurement of the kind of the stories, be it Economic Times or even a Business Insider or your story or Inc. 42, there are 4 things that we focus on, which is, number 1, what is the kind of impact that the story is having on the brand? Second, is it impacting the growth that we are targeting or we are chasing? Third, is it helping us transform the image of the brand or perception of the brand? And fourth is it creating any form of conversation in the social space? So these are mostly the 4 factors that we focus on. And whether it comes in print, TV, online, doesn't matter. And com coming to the challenges which Xavier has asked, probably the challenge is we need to be more flexible in terms of adopting newer tech which comes to the in the media space. Uh, be it influencer, because I am seeing not many startups who are starting up are interested or courageous enough to explore anything which is beyond media. And that is one change we need to see in the startup space. They need to explore more and more uh, uh, format of communications and PR, because PR is no longer a media relations stuff which we used to see 10 years, 15 years back. Second is, while social people are adopting social at a much wider scale, influencer is something which I believe the startup ecosystem needs to adopt at a much rapid pace. And yeah, that's about it.
I think Bhavya is there. Can you just bring her up there? A link went off? Okay. I think Priyam, why don't you just add your perspective?
I can hear you guys.
Okay, I think why don't you just add your perspective, Bhavya, though we can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, your video is also stuck, but I could hear the entire conversation.
Yeah, so you can just
Cool.
give your inputs on measurement metrics.
Absolutely. So the way we look at metrics for PR are very specific, right? The publication, the story sentiment, the headline, and whether the key message was delivered. And the way we look at the outcome of it, all of these being input metrics, the outcome, the way we track it is via the brand health trackers and consumer dipsticks.
I think, Priyam, you want to come in? Oh, okay. You know why I don't believe in this hybrid world? I don't. You know. I think, Bhavya, I'll just have Priyam given her inputs. Okay. Go ahead, Priyam. Yeah.
The way we look at measuring PR at WakeFit actually is very similar to what Bhavya just mentioned. We look at the impact that a story has created. So there is, of course, the reach of the story, but more importantly, what messages have been carried, how prominently the brand is mentioned, what is the significance of the larger story if it's an industry story, and how is WakeFit positioned in it. So there are those certain parameters based on which we kind of develop a PR score and kind of, arrive at a measurement score, so to speak. But one interesting thing that we've seen at WakeFit is we time and again also tend to do advertorials. So it's actually interesting when startups allocate some budgets to to PR and do these experiments, you actually find out very, very interesting insights. As an example, when we did a couple of advertorials in a Your Story and a Mint and a ET, we found that Your Story had the highest impact from the numbers that they actually kind of came back with respect to the clicks, with respect to the views.
Can you say that again, Priyam? Can you say that louder and again? A lot of people would be very happy.
Yeah, I think, what we found was that Your Story actually gave us many, many more clicks, views, and engagement than ET did. Mint was good as well. ET, we did a print and online engagement, but Mint and Your Story performed way better. So that was very, very different from the initial hypothesis we actually went with. So there are there's value in investing in PR and doing these experiments to kind of arrive at accurate measurements that matter to brands, I guess.
So the last one is very, very, and I think we'll wrap it up in another 5 minutes, is on pricing. And that's a very, very sensitive topic when it particularly comes to startups, because I think some of them start literally next to zero. That's true. And I think there are a lot of them who are paying a huge premium as well. So I just want all of you guys to quickly contribute your thoughts on pricing. So anyone can go. Bhavya, if you're there and you can listen to us, you can go as well. I think Vasu, they think you're good on pricing. Why don't you just start? You do BD all the time. So you must be doing that.
What exactly about the pricing?
Tell us all the troubles that you're going through when you're finally closing the pitch. Because it all boils down to that finally, right?
Well, I think startups primarily, and specifically bootstrap startups, I think money is a very critical factor for them, you know, while, and we need to be a little mindful of that as well. I mean, when we are looking at a early stage company, there have been times that we have actually, you know, we've seen merit in the business and we've seen that this brand has the potential to become a success in future. And there we have taken a hit on the pricing for the simple intent that we want to associate with that brand and be part of their storytelling, you know. But I think a lot of brands also and entrepreneurs in the startups space also need to realize, and especially in the ones in the, you know, the funded ones and the ones that are actually getting all the investor attention, they still tend to give a little backseat to the PR function when it comes to the entire marketing, you know, function that we're looking at. So there'll be more allocation to, you know, advertising or some of the other functions, but still PR gets the least amount of percentage. So I think, and PR in fact is the most critical out of all these functions to actually establish the relevance of, you know, startups as for that particular industry, because that can only, that's the only good way of, and a credible way of speaking to each of your stakeholders. So from a pricing point of view also, I think we need a little more than what we are given.
Just add on top of to that, I think you made valid points, but before that, I think you need to change the perception which exists in the industry, just not with startups, but across brands. For them, PR means media relations. Unless and until you bring additional value proposition on top of media, be it social media, influencer and stuff like that, and it's not that they're not doing it, but how are you bringing those additional layer on top of media and make it as a package for the clients or for the brands you are pitching? I think that will probably give you better inroads into the pricing negotiation.
Little counter view. We don't compromise on pricing. We go as a premium priced consultancy because we believe we bring that value to the table. And we want the client also to understand that they're working with someone who can, you know, give them value to whatever they are being paying. And it goes, you know, into the servicing itself, because the kind of talent that you deploy to service the client, the kind of intelligence that is required to, you know, bring the stories out, the relationship capital that is used, everything costs. And I think the startup who understands this value that and they are ready to pay. I have bootstraps paying a decent amount of money. I have seed, you know, startups with just a seed funding are paying good amount of money because they've seen that value that early stage PR brings in and what, you know, what it can do for them. So agencies compromising on pricing is something that I think, you know, we need to ask ourselves whether we really need to continue doing that.
Okay, so let me just wind off in the last couple of minutes. So with the summary, this is my experience when I was a rookie, you know, working for one of the largest PR firms in India that I think must have been 22 years back. There was this large client, my boss and my super boss, and we were all sitting, and I was, you know, in my very big enthusiasm, I'd done a lot of research on that industry. This client CEO was sitting, and then the meeting was going on, and I said that to the client, that your industry is going to not exist in the next 10 years from now because of this, blah, 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 and all of that. And then there was dead silence in the room. And then we all came back to the agency office. And the client had called my super boss and told him, I don't want this guy to work on that account. okay, because he said PR is PR. I wanted you to come and tell me how to get me out in the media. I don't want you to tell me what the business model is, right? So to there, to now, I think last month, we signed a client who separately is paying for consulting, a separate retainer for consulting. And I think that's a huge arc of progress that all of us have gone through, and I hope that stays as one of the things that I think all of us have to go and evolve into. And I'm really, really thankful to all of you in the room for actually being patient, because lunchtime typically is around 1 to 1:45, and I think we are sitting here yapping at around 1:59 and 2, and I think all of you have been very, patient and good listeners. And I think if you have any questions, I think I can just take one and then just wind it off in the interest of time for everyone. But there are no questions. I think I'm as interested in the roti and naan and the rice as well as all of you. So if any question, we can just take one and then we will just wind off.
I think we'll have to set them free for the food.
Okay, I got the answer. Okay. And I think, you must have noticed that we've been a wonderful panel, because we all sat together and joked and talked a lot about each other for 1 hour. And that's why I think we've had this, interactive panel that we've been before all of you. So my heartfelt thanks to all the 6 panelists who've been with me here and made this a great panel. Thank you, all of you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this would be the end of this session. Thank you so much, everyone on the panel right now.